This is not a rebuild. It's a collapse. I completely agree with that. It's not a rebuild. Rebuild was not the plan. This is a flat out collapse because they tried to rebuild, retool, do all these things to reset, to go for one more run, right? It's like Ian's a Preds fans like David Poyle. It's bring the band, keep the band together to go for one more tour, right? They've collapsed. They tried to rework the offensive line to compete, failed. They tried to bring in weapons and rely on second-year players like Burks and Chig to make the offense more explosive, failed. They tried to have Ryan Tannehill have DeAndre Hopkins behind a reworked offensive line to get them over the top offensively. That failed. Derrick Henry is failing because his offensive line is garbage or beyond that. The defense has Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry off the ACL. He's back. You go get Arden Key, a motivated player. Azeez Al-Shire, motivated player in free agency too. You got a young player playing for a contract in Christian Fulton, another second-year guy you got to rely on in Roger McCreary, and Sean Murphy-Bunting in a prove-it deal in free agency. Failed. This is a collapse because rebuilding was not the plan. Rebuild is the reality because their plan collapsed.
Okay. I think everything that you said is true. I think it's a different lens, though. I think instead of collapse, which I think you and Ian eloquently said that. But doesn't this feel more like denial than collapse? Because it's denial of all of these things. It didn't add up. And we've all seen or been around somebody who has been in denial. And this is the case because and the Titans got, but there's a lot of people on the outside, Vegas included, that didn't fall for that, right? They didn't fall for the rebuild talk. It's denial. And then the collapse started, and here's where I think the collapse is probably, I don't know, I'm not saying it's unfair, but when they traded away Kevin Byard and Will Levis was named the star, I mean, they said everything that they needed.
Yeah, but Ian follows up and says they work in tandem. Collapse and
may
denial.
Be fair.
Right? Because they were in denial about what they truly should have done, which is what we said, that they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to do all these reset things to go for one more tour and keep the band together. But they also drafted Will Levis and used a highly valued draft pick to do that, to plan for the future. Like they tried to do two things at once. And it doesn't look like either of those are truly working out very well. Like, I'm not out on Will Levis. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we should have seen the first W coming followed by 3 L's like Will and Levis, right? But it's not, I'm not out on Levis at all. The offensive line is atrocious. The plan overall around him is to basically not get him killed. And I think one thing that's kind of gone under realized is that he ended the game completing 9 passes in a row. But it didn't feel like that, right?
Yeah,
but
it's
again,
trash time. Look, bro, you're down 20. So
for sure.
The Titans down 20 equals a loss, boys and girls.
But Will Levis is not the problem. There are so many things surrounding him that are the problem. And I do look, we'll kind of see. We'll talk about Will Levis and his comments after the game too. But I'm all with Ian. This is a collapse. This is an absolute collapse of a season. And are they at rock bottom yet or not? That's, to be discovered.
Well, and Tress brings this up, says some folks just know that cheaper parts build a house. They won't stand forever, and follows that up. It says it's not denial when they chose to go cheap on offensive line. I will say they didn't have a lot to work with. You had a $30 million quarterback. You had a high-paid running back. Harold Landry had a ton of cap space. They reworked their offensive line with what their ability was. They went out and drafted a first-round, top 15 offensive lineman. Like I get what you're saying, Tress, but they did probably as best they could without moving on from Ryan Tannehill. That was their key, is that they didn't just rebuild and say, all right, Tannehill, we appreciate your services. We're going to go with the young quarterback, and we're just going to take the CJ Stroud type approach, play him to start and go forward. They kept that money, and $30 million is a massive amount of money. Like, you can't deny it. It's the most expensive on the team, and they were trying to build around that. Did they build very well? To Tress's point, no, they didn't.